It's funny. Have you ever been walking through a garden or maybe brought a new plant home and just admired how beautiful it was? Without ever realizing you might actually be handling a killer. Well, today we're diving into the pretty wild and kind of terrifying world of deadly plants that, for some reason, we absolutely love to grow. And the craziest part? We're not talking about some rare exotic weed hiding out in a remote jungle. Nope. We're talking about plants that could be in your neighbor's front yard right now, or maybe even sitting in a pot on your own windowsill. We plant them, we care for them, we admire their beauty, all while they're quietly holding on to some seriously potent and sometimes lethal secrets. It's a real head-scratcher, isn't it? I mean, why would any of us knowingly grow something that could cause so much harm? That is the big question we're going to get to the bottom of. And let me tell you, the answer is way more complex and fascinating than you think. Okay, so to figure this all out, we first need to meet the main players. Let's take a little walk through this lethal garden and get to know some of the most common and dangerous plants that are hiding in plain sight. Our first suspect is Aconitum. It goes by some really gentle-sounding names, like monkshood or even wolfsbane. And yeah, it looks super elegant, almost majestic, with those tall stalks of deep purple flowers, but you really, really shouldn't let its good looks fool you. And this is where it gets wild. On one hand, you have this absolutely stunning plant that looks amazing in a garden. But on the other hand, every single part of it contains something called aconitum, a toxin so incredibly potent that just touching the plant without gloves can be enough to deliver a fatal dose. No joke. So what exactly is aconitum? Well, it's a wicked fast neurotoxin. It gets into your system and just starts shutting down your nerve channels, which leads to numbness, vomiting, and eventually total paralysis of your heart and lungs. Its history is just as dark as its chemistry. Ancient cultures used it to tip their arrows for hunting and for warfare. Think about that. It's a weapon of nature that we've invited into our backyards. All right, let's move on and get ready because this next one might be a bit of a shock, mostly because it is literally everywhere. Nerium, Oleander, is a go-to for landscapers. It lines highways, it's in public parks, suburban yards. You've definitely seen it. The thing about oleander is people love it because it's just so tough. It's always green, it barely needs water, and it's always got flowers. But it's a total trap. Every single part of this plant is loaded with oleandrin, a toxin that messes with your heart's rhythm. A single leaf can be fatal to a child. And there are these horror stories about people getting poisoned just by using oleander branches as skewers to roast hot dogs over a campfire. That's how stable and nasty this poison is. Now for a plant with a complete split personality. On one side, it's an incredibly useful plant for industry, but on the other, it's the source of one of the most famous and potent toxins on the planet. Meet the castor bean plant. The key here, the whole thing it hinges on, is the processing. We grow this plant to get castor oil, which is totally safe and is used in everything from medicines to engine lubricants. But the raw seeds that the oil comes from, they contain ricin. The contrast is just stark. A valuable, helpful product and a deadly bioweapon, both from the exact same plant. Ricin has a reputation for a reason. It's sinister in how it works. It gets inside your body's cells and just flips a switch, shutting down their ability to make the proteins they need to function. That causes a total system-wide collapse, leading to organ failure. It's terrifyingly efficient. So the plants we've looked at so far, you basically have to eat them to get into trouble. But our last suspect? Oh no, you don't even need to take a bite. Just touching giant hogweed can cause some absolutely devastating injuries. And this thing is a literal monster. It can tower over you, growing over 13 feet tall. The crazy thing is, it was originally brought to other countries as an ornamental curiosity because, well, people were impressed by its size. But its sap contains these chemicals that, when they get on your skin and are exposed to sunlight, cause horrible, blistering chemical burns. It can leave permanent scars, and if you get that sap in your eyes, it can cause blindness. Okay, so we've met the lineup. Monkshood, Oleander, Castor Bean, Hogweed. They are, without a doubt, seriously dangerous. Which just brings us right back to that central mystery. If we know all this, why in the world do we keep them around? No, seriously. After hearing all of that, you have to ask why. Why are these plants still sold in nurseries? Why are they planted in public spaces? It's not just ignorance. It turns out to be a mix of some very, very human motivations.
It really boils down to a few key things. First, there's just our pure obsession with aesthetics. We're drawn to the dramatic, deep purple of monkshood. Then, of course, there's economic utility. The castor bean plant is the backbone of a huge industry. Sometimes, believe it or not, the poison is the point. Plants like foxglove have toxins that, in very tiny, controlled doses, become life-saving heart medication. And finally, it's just about good old-fashioned resilience. We plant oleander because it's tough and gives us beautiful flowers where almost nothing else will grow. We're drawn to their beauty, their usefulness, and their power.
So it seems pretty clear these plants aren't going anywhere. We're tied to them through history, medicine, and just plain looks. The question then isn't really how to get rid of them, but how do we live with them safely? And that right there, that's the core of the problem. Most of us just don't know the risks. A gardener might plant foxglove for that lovely cottage garden look, with no idea its leaves can stop a heart. A parent might buy a beautiful houseplant, not knowing it's called dumb cane, because chewing on it can make your throat swell shut. This gap in our knowledge is where the real danger is. So the path forward isn't about fear, it's about respect. First, you have to know what's in your garden. Identify your plants. Second, you have to respect their power. These toxins are sophisticated defenses honed over millions of years. And finally, educate others. If you know oleander is dangerous, maybe mention it to your neighbor who's trimming it without gloves. Awareness really is our best defense. At the end of the day, these plants aren't evil. They are marvels of evolution. Their danger is part of their story, part of what makes them so powerful. By choosing to live with them, we're also choosing to take on the responsibility of understanding that power and treating it with the knowledge it deserves. So maybe the next time you see a beautiful flower, just pause for a second and ask, what's your story?